Hello everyone, good evening. Welcome to the day 2 of AISS. I hope you all are having a good time over here. So today we are here to deliberate the session on Resilient Industries 4.0, architecture, capabilities and strategies for OT incident response. So DSCI is extremely thankful to have this on board with our speakers for today. We have Mr. Venkatesh Subramanian Ramakrishnan, Head of Global Cybersecurity Consulting at L&T and Smart World. I request you to take it. Thank you. Mr. Somnath Kundu, Deputy General Manager and alternate CISO at NTPC. We have Mr. Vikas Karunakaran, Associate Director, Threat Research at Secterio. DSCI especially mentions thanks to our moderator who will be facilitating the session for us today. Warm welcome to Mr. Amitava Mukherjee, Director of Cybersecurity at Siemens. Handing over to you, Mr. Amitava.
Thank you everyone for being here. Actually, my previous panelist has done the toughest job of keeping all of us, including me, awake for last 45 minutes. So that good job has been done by then. And we are missing one more colleague actually, Arvind. He's not well. He's under the weather. He's not keeping up well, so we'll be missing him today. And they also gave a very logical connect to this session. So the time synchronization, forensics, probably also touches our incident response to quite a major extent. So thanks, Homika. Thanks for hosting us. So just to, give a, I'll not say setting the context, but maybe giving the tone in the right way, that we are all observing or experiencing rapid digitalization in the recent times. Whereas we were discussing, the previous panelist was explaining about IT and OT convergence, the rapid pace at which is getting converged. So that is why I think the resilience, we all moving from cyber secure state to cyber resilient state. So it also is applicable in the areas of Industry 4.0. So maybe I will request Vikash for our better understanding, if you can set the context to start with for us today and for the benefit of the entire audience here, and can give us a brief explanation about what we really understand when we speak this word called Resilient Industry 4.0.
So, thank you. So when we talk about industry resilient of or resilient industry 4.0, so it basically starts with the industry revolution that came up started in the 18th century, where we had industry 1.0, where everything was mechanical, and in the 19th century we moved on to the electrical industry, like things powered by electricity, and then third industry which came around industry 3.0, which came around in 1970, which was where the PLCs were introduced actually, which means the computerized industrial revolution. Basically, it automates half of your manual effort, and it saves the human resources, and also yeah, with respect to the cost, and also with respect to the health of the human resource actually. So in industry 3.0, that is where we see a lot of people still being there actually. So though we are in industry 4.0 right now, where as Amitava sir mentioned, IT and OT convergence is happening, but still many of the industries are in the revolution of industry 3.0, where they are using the individual PLCs and programmable logic controllers to do the programming, and they automate their stuffs actually. But many industries have moved into industry 4.0, and they want to converge both of their IT and OT networks, because they want to monitor and control things remotely. So that is where this 4.0 comes with the help of IoT devices, especially industrial IoT. So basically, you will be seeing IoT gateways which converts the serial devices into Ethernet-based devices, where you can tap the communication and store them on the cloud. You can perform various kind of analysis, and you can control it remotely via the SCADA systems and via remotely from a different location only. And the data that you are collecting also can be monitored through AI and ML and big data. uh, and it automates all of your process, and also you have a complete control of your complete OT industry. uh, and you get a proper value out of it. So the problem now is, when IT and OT converge, security becomes a problem right now. Though we are having a lot of value by converging IT and OT, the risk is that cyber hackers also might come into your picture here. So in this case, the resilience means, so there are protective mechanisms when it comes to protecting Industry 4.0. That means you have firewalls, you have many other devices, and you do threat intelligence, lot of other things. But resilient in the sense, how quickly can you recover your production once an incident happens, actually, with when it comes to cyber incident. So we have seen that in the Industry 4.0 with the modern PLCs, uh, though it is though the PLCs are completely automated and there are controls remotely that you can fix things remotely, but still there are problems like malfunction of PLCs, malfunction of SCADA machines, malfunction of RTUs. Those kind of cases we are still seeing, actually. So where some kind of human intervention is needed. So here the problem is, since we are seeing a lot of malfunctions, also technical malfunctions also on the industry, it is very difficult to differentiate whether it was a cyber incident or a technical malfunction. So that is where the problem in the industry comes, and that is where the resilience of the industry also comes into picture, that how quickly are we able to recover to production or recover back to the production, uh, whether it could be a technical malfunction or a cyber incident. So this basically explains the resilient industry 4.0.
Thank you so much, Vikas, for setting the context for us. So I move on. I mean, just a coincidence that it is in sequence, in ordering sequence, or the sitting sequence as well. So my next question is to Shloman. So do you see any conceptual differences for incident response in the areas of OT and IT? If yes, please elaborate.
Yeah, as per me, there are differences. First of all, thank you, DSCI, for inviting me in this session. How I look into it is that OT being having a plethora of different complex devices. So altogether, the threat source, threat actors, vulnerabilities, and the impact altogether is different. And there, in the present context also, the motivation of the hackers have increased immensely. Earlier, we could have said that they were script kiddies as far as the OTs are concerned. But nowadays, the very advanced hackers are there, and capability have increased. They are using AISS specific skills to hack these systems. So, yeah, that part is different, because now the hacking are even more sophisticated. And as sir was telling earlier, that in OT it is very difficult to understand whether it is actually a malfunction or it is actually some hacking instance. So for example, an operating station giving a command on its own, it can happen because of a misconfiguration of the OT, but we have to look into it and see whether that is some kind of a cyber attack happening on that. The other part of it is a very different part of it, and which is the most complex part, is the collection of logs. So if we go by the incident response scheme, so framing the CSERT is of utmost importance. Now what CSERT, with the word CSERT comes the centralized collection of logs. We have different plethora of OT devices spread across different geographical locations. And as a single organization, it is very difficult to get all these logs and then do analysis on it. And once, if we take into consideration that the analysis is possible, then comes the next question. Will we be able to reach the root cause? So the forensic part becomes very difficult. Why? Because we are dealing with stuffs like controllers, we are dealing with stuffs like RTUs, IEDs, where what kind of logs are being generated, what is the efficacy of those logs, what are the criticalities of those logs, how to extract those logs, that itself is a very complex phenomena. And another aspect to that is the definitely the remediation part and the recovery or restoration part. So availability being of utmost importance for OT, we can understand that backup becomes that much more important. And today's world, we are talking about tertiary backups. Again, we are moving to magnetic backups and all those tape backups and etc. So I think in these particular pretext, the incident response with respect to OT is a bit different with that with respect to the IT.
Thank you, Somnath, for giving us an explanation and helping us to understand the conceptual difference between incident response of OT and IT. So as a connected question, Venkat, if I can invite you and your views about, say for example, if we double click on the incident response essential elements, which one of this, especially in the domain of OT cybersecurity, you choose to prioritize and why?
Thank you, Amitabh. So I think what Som said, I think I just want to take a little 30,000 feet level. So typically, I'm sure you all would have engaged in the IT incident response planning. When you look at the OT side, the two questions keep coming. In IT, how you manage the business using IT, whereas in OT, why you are in business. So there are two different questions, because why you are in a business, the response plan is different than how you manage the business. The second is OT focus more on safety first. The way I look at it is that first is to look at the possible scenarios, then comes the plausible scenarios, and then the probable scenarios. When I say possible scenarios, you list all the potential scenarios that you could think of. Then filter it as a plausible scenarios, and then filter it as a probable scenarios. When you get into the probable scenarios, there are two ways of looking at it. One is the scenarios already happened in the market. There are a lot of incidents that happen, not necessarily in your industry. It could be adjacent industries or adjacent scenarios. Take those 3-4 scenarios and then do the consequence management, incident response, internally what you think is the appropriate scenarios that you're talking. Probably you will end up coming at 5 different scenario planning. When you do the crown jewel exercise, because incident response, what I've seen is in IT, I come from IT as well as working on OT, it comes as the last stage of the cycle. First we do the threat modeling, risk management, and then architecture, putting a controls, and then comes the incident response. The difference I see here is that incident response should come as the first, because as Som said, the collection of logs is going to be different than the typical IT collection of logs, because you need to get into the engineering workstations, HMI, historian. It's not necessarily a typical operating system logs. So that's a key differentiator. The data collection framework itself needs to be evolved for that. In a crown jewel, when you take looking at the IT, we get into the data, intellectual property, we start talking about the data criticality. Here, it differs from the way we look at it. It's a function first, systems and technology. They look at the function, critical functions that plant is operated. What are the systems are connected? Because anything OT is a system of systems. System connected to the function, and then comes the technology. If you could prioritize, as I said, do the scenario planning, look at the crown jewel from a function, systems and technologies, look at the collection framework, and that would help to start the game better.
Lovely explained, very well explained, Venkat. And moving to again Vikash, again by chance in the order of sequencing of your sitting as such. So the very important topic which Venkat just now explained about, the data collection framework as such. So my next question to you will be, do you see any major shift while we prepare or strategize our incident response plan for OT environment?
So as Venkat told, the primary problem while we are shifting from IT to OT incident response is that the log collection part actually, because what we have seen in most of the OT network is that the part which is the systems which are connected to the SCADA are all under the domain, and the systems which are connected directly at the plant, they are all completely individual. They are like individual workstations which are not connected to any domain. So though they are not connected to internet, which becomes difficult in that case, how do we collect the logs actually from those machines if something is happening. So the other thing is also that the skill set the people have with respect to incident response, because until now we had traditional incident responders who knows about IT systems. They know what kind of logs, what kind of attacks can happen on the IT scenarios. But when it comes to OT, they don't have any idea about how OT works actually. They don't have idea about PLCs. They don't have idea about protocols which runs on the OT. How is the network connected? They don't have idea about Purdue models. They don't idea about the process, procedures, all of those things. So this is where the problem comes between the maintenance engineers and the incident responders. When you build a team of incident responders in the OT industry, it is very difficult to differentiate, as I mentioned before, whether it was a technical malfunction or an cyber incident. So that is where it is very important for a collaborative work between the OT engineers and also the incident responders. So the practical problem that we are facing in the industry right now is incident responders or any cyber security experts, they do not have skills on the OT side. They do not know how to OT works. But also vice versa, OT engineers do not know anything about cybersecurity. So this is where they both have to work together to understand this is how the OT technology works, and the cybersecurity analyst help on this is how an incident can happen. So there has to be a collaboration between these two to make this work actually.
So maybe Vikash, a connected question to you. As you mentioned about this very important part about to Vikash only. Uh, you mentioned about the technicians or the OT technicians and the incident responder. So my next question to you that what do you think will be the capabilities which we should look into while preparing a overall OT incidents response framework? What will be your take on this?
Yeah. So when we want to strategize or create a framework around complete OT incident response, the first thing is that, as I mentioned before, awareness is a very important part actually. So we have seen a lot of OT industries in India practically, and what we have observed is that, so people ask us, my network is not even connected to internet. What is the possibility of getting it hacked? Why would I even invest on cyber security when it is not even connected to the internet? So it basically starts with the awareness when you want to strategize a cyber security for OT, not just incident response, but the complete cyber security for OT. That you need to create awareness in the people that cyber incidents can happen on OT attacks even without internet via an insider. Most of the OT attacks happen via an insider only. That is what we have observed in the past also. So as part of the strategy, first comes the awareness, and then improvising the skills of both OT engineers and also the incident responders. The OT engineer should be trained with cybersecurity skills, and cybersecurity engineers should be trained with OT skills, and then they should collaboratively work together. They should have a common person in between who we can call as a technical support. Like the maintenance engineers, they are directly on the plant. They know about how the controllers work, what kind of controls you can do on the site. Cybersecurity people, they will completely work with the logs and all of those things. So in between comes the technical support people who understand both of these scenarios, and they can define whether it was a technical malfunction or a cyber incident. Because if without having that clear scenario, if we just give all the incidents, all kind of incidents that we have seen, consider it as a cyber incident and give it to incident responders, they will be having overloaded with a lot of false positives. And if incident responses, they tell everything, this could be a malfunction, there will be a lot of false negatives, and we might never catch that particular threat actor who has come into it. Maybe he might be residing in the network for years, and we might still not be able to capture him. And one more thing is that the logs collection has to happen with respect to OT from the beginning. Actually, it's not like we will be collecting the logs forensic data at the time when you see an incident. Actually, the problem is that when it comes to OT, the cost is high actually. So when the production is down, it could be a technical malfunction or cyber incident that comes in the response part while we analyze it. But at the management perspective, the immediate thing that they want is get the system running. I cannot lose money when it comes to OT. If the plant is not running for a whole day, they might lose millions also, depending upon what kind of industry they are working on. So, but incident response work in a way that we will take as much as time we want to analyze this. If you want me to get into the crux of this incident and get deep into what has been done, who has done it, it will take time for me. Don't run, get into product, don't put this back to production. Give me as much as time I want. So this is where the issue comes actually. So that is why it is very important that the logs are being collected from a long period of time before the incident happens, and there should be an offline copy or forensic there should be a forensic lab created offline, especially an offline forensic lab created in the OT plant itself. It could be either a third party based provided service or an in-house team also they could have created, but the log should be continuously collected and it should be out of the complete OT system also, so that if something has happened, they have an offline copy of it also, so that they can immediately start the production back, and also the incident response team can focus on analyzing the incident for as much as a time they need, and they can get into the root of the problem.
Thank you, Vikash. So you touched upon people, you touched upon exchange of information between the cybersec in IT and OT, and some off-site lab as well. So my next question is Shomnath. So typically incident response implementation is influenced by the laid down architecture of any organization. So what will be your recommendation towards the right kind of architecture augmenting incident response process for an OT environment? So what architecture should we be considering on this?
So, so I would like to break the question into 2-3 parts: the administrative part, technical part, configuration part. So, for the administrative part, I think time has come when we positively think about business rationales, mission and vision of the organization, and then subsequently plan our policies and procedures according to our mission and vision. I think there is a big gap about what the run-the-mill policies that are going on in different organizations vis-a-vis the ultimate mission and vision of the organization. The second part to it is definitely we should put much more stress onto the information and documentation management. There is a big gap at present as far as the OT is concerned, and add on to that, I think the need of the hour is immediately to go for risk assessment and risk management. So that is, I think, the administrative part changes that needs to be done as far as what is happening presently in the OT environment. Now coming to the technical part, I think we should go by this NIST framework or cybersecurity management system framework in the form like in our home. If you see, will we be able to understand that some theft has happened if we are not aware of what jewelry is there in our home? We will not be able to understand actually. Why so? Because we are not aware of our assets. In the present day, in the OT industry, asset management and asset inventory maintenance is, I think, the need of the hour. And to monitor the asset is the primary objective, I think. That should be the most prioritized objective, because the moment we start monitoring the assets and the network traffic, we will be able to understand a lot of, be it cyber attacks or be it some anomaly or some behavioral changes in the network, which we are at present not able to understand. So the detection part, I am trying to say that the detection part is the most important. Until and unless we detect something, leave aside the other parts of an incident response. And subsequent to that comes the people, process, and technology. So there are a number of technologies available. We can create a SIEM, we can create a SOC. If we want, we can go for a localized SOC or a centralized SOC. That is up to us. But are the people aware? Like as Vikas sir was telling, means I will give one example. Like so, in one incident, what happened? Uh, every 13th or the 14th day, one controller was giving command to a pump, and the pump was tripping. A very curious case. So why it is happening every 13th or 14th day? And then upon detailed analysis, it was found that it is nothing to do with cyber. Only it was an A by B, where B becomes 0 after every 13th or 14th day. And the controller goes to infinite CPU consumption and gives an irrational command to the pump. So we need this kind of people who will be able to clearly demarcate, and they are so upskilled and aware that what they are dealing with in an OT cyber incident. So, like in a plant, field bus or mod bus may be a normal thing, whereas for another plant, maybe we have willfully shut down the mod bus and the field bus. Now, when as a CSERT we are getting this log, if my people part is not aware and not trained properly, then they will get diverted from the actual analysis of this part. And subsequent to this is the process. So I have already talked about the process part in the administration thing. And overall to that, I think that we should also now rigorously think about some further toned down zones and conduits. So largely speaking, like I am from a generation industry, so we talk about let's say boiler, turbine, generator. So 3 zones, and their safety instrumented systems. But is it so? So if we go into the detail, we will find that understanding the criticality of the business process is also very important, and then plan accordingly. That will definitely give us a good architecture, a good visibility to that architecture, and subsequently good analysis.
Yeah, thank you so much, Somnath. Actually, you touched on very an important topic. Be it technology, be it state-of-art technology, still people still remains to be the most critical component in the ecosystem. So I will move on to Venkat. So since we have heard Vikash, we have heard Somnath sharing their views, their feedback, their inputs. So in case if you are asked to now stitch this OT resurgence incident response and resilient industry 4.0, what will be your way forward? How do we stitch now the OT incident response with the resilience of industry 4.0?
Okay.
Are they complementing each other? Are they totally different, north south kind of?
No,
How is
it's
it?
yes and no. So resiliency and efficiency are a trade-off. Okay, I keep saying that if you really want to bring efficiency, then you are trading off with resiliency. And if you really want to have a resiliency, then you are trading off with efficiency. So if your OT systems bringing a lot of efficiency with the proprietary technology, then you really want to get into the industry 4.0 resiliency, then you need to trade off with the efficiency. That is the one thing. Is all the plans are ready for the trade-off? I don't think so. There are still challenges in trading it off. Second, when I say resiliency, and I'll give you a couple of examples that, is the plant ready to even to go beyond the normal network to private LTE or Wi-Fi 6 kind of setup? Are they really ready? The products are ready, the technology is ready, but the plans are not still not ready. The second is even the PLC side. I'm just going a little down in the controllers. The PLC controllers are proprietary communication to the sensors, but there are systems available. They are actually bifurcating between proprietary and non-proprietary. Okay, the PLCs also comes with the proprietary operating system and the Windows operating systems. The Windows operating systems is primarily designed for a future purposes to be ready really for industry 4.0 requirement, where you need to communicate to various devices to throw in the sensor data for analytics. Is the industry really ready for that, or they still want to stick to that? So there is a trade-off. I just want to tell you that there is a complete trade-off between should I run this manufacturing plant as efficient as possible right now? Am I open to explore the new technology for me to be ready for Industry 4.0? There is a compromise that we need to do it. When it comes to incident response, I think this is good and bad. So the bad part is that for a typical IT, so end of the day, what I foresee is that the SOC will eventually get converged, where your detection response, though we may start with the OT specific security operations center, but eventually it get into converged IT OT SOC. That's a final game. When we do that, right now the challenges that we see in the convergence is that a lot of stuffs are engineering related, like system of systems and physics, whereas the IT, somebody running a SOC may not understand the technology. So there are a lot of collaboration needs to happen at the plant level to ensure that we understand exactly to respond to those events. There is a lot of collaboration required. For the future, I see hardware is getting eaten by software. Okay, as more software coming up, and uh, what we do in IT, DevOps, DevSecOps, we eventually will come into the manufacturing plant, if not now, in the next 3-4 years. Because if they really want to bring data insights, efficiency, resiliency factors to bring in, is the incident response that we're going to define now is going to be the similar in the next 3-4 years? I have my own doubt. The incident response, as of now, that we would define for OT, has a lot of dependency on engineering systems and other stuff, which is embedded hardware that requires a lot of proprietary communications and a lot of collaboration requires the floor level. But in the 5 years, as I say, IT OT convergence, there are a lot of learning that we bring in from IT side can be put in place in the OT side as the future to bring in really a cyber resiliency program for OT IT convergence. That's my point. Amit.
Okay, just again, I mean, continuing with the similar topic. So, what is your overall, take on the current state of preparedness of our country towards OT incident response as of now? Are we half the way? Are we quarter of the way? Or are we already there as a country? What's your statement?
Now, I think currently, I think OT understood the manufacturing plant, any OT large scale, they understand the concept of fail to save, right? I think the design itself, the entire plant is designed for fail to save, right? I think that is important. The second is they also take care of the safety of the plant. All the scenarios, whether it's the cyber scenarios or non-cyber scenarios, eventually the outcome is related to the people safety and the manufacturing plant outage and the environmental. More or less, they are handling it. Now we are bringing the cyber security scenario to see how they respond to it. Now the current setup is that the OT team is looking up to the IT team because it's a cyber. They say you must be knowing better than us, so you respond to the event. But IT side also finding it difficult because we don't know how these plans are working at the ground level. This is where the collaboration is started, okay? And a lot of education, as Vikas said, education has started. We've been talking to quite a few customers. Also, I'm talking it. Now they want to start with awareness at the plant level. Uh, we know how the plant works. We know what we need to do when it comes to safety issue. We know how to handle the environmental issues. We also know how to handle productivity loss. If there is a gap in the process, we know exactly how to handle it. Okay, you tell us any of this will impact because of cyber. You teach me how these scenarios would come in, so that we understand exactly how this impacts. Once that comes in, then the acceptance of cyber visibility comes into play. So there is a stage. There are companies who are manufacturing plant, large power sectors. They moved from awareness to the implementation phase. Some are in full operational mode. It varies from stage to stage, but I think awareness is critical. I think it's already picking up in a big way, in my view.
Thank you so much for this, giving us the context and also wrapping up properly. So I'll just touch upon three or four, key highlights or takeaways for me at least. And thank you for being such a engaging panelist. So I think we understood that this concept of you can only protect what you know is also equally applicable even for the OT environment. So asset visibility or asset transparency is one of the key topics. We touched upon the data collection framework as a very critical topic, which Venkat also highlighted. Shomnath mentioned about log collection and analysis strategy, and the quality of people who are involved in the entire ball game. And Vikash touched upon about exchange of IT, OT, cybersecurity, the intelligence between these two topics, and collaboration between the technical operators and the incident responder. So I think with that, I'll wrap up the session and open it for the question and answer session. Those who have entered this room a little late, I do not know if you're upset a little bit by seeing the end time there, because we started half an hour later. So thank you for being patient with us, even you were expecting some other topics to come up. So we are ready to take any questions from you if you have any questions for us. We will share this microphone because we are running short of microphones. Any questions?
Yeah, so this question is about frameworks that are currently in place for OT industry, like specifically ISE 624443 and all, like which is lays down the security related framework for OT, and also defines some capability maturity kind of evaluation in place. So I mean, what are your views about whether this industry, OT industry, as of today, how wholehearted have they adopted this, and do they really understand their capability with respect to the security framework that has been laid down for OT? And this was one question. The other one was, so I think now we are seeing explosion of IoT as well, right? So I think even OT industry are using quite a lot of sensors which are talking to each other, right? And so how do you see this IoT integrated with the OT, and what kind of a security do you think this resilient industry 4.0 will be able to manage with this?
The 62443 I can take. So, 62443 is, I would say, a very rugged and complex standard. Altogether, there are 14 parts, 4 informational and 10 standards. And if we go by the 62443, as the question you put, I would say that we should go by first doing the cybersecurity life cycle. And once that is framed, then we should go for CSMS, Cybersecurity Management System, followed by ensuring the fourth horizontal of this standard, that is the component part. Now the component part, as you were telling about the maturity, so the entire maturity is dependent on the capability of the security that the component is giving. Suppose I have kept Windows XP, it will do no good to me because the capability of Windows XP as security level is very low. So it's a culmination, I would say, of cybersecurity lifecycle, then the CSMS, followed by this product and developmental security lifecycle. So in a nutshell. And regarding the implementation of 62443, since the standard is a bit complex standard, a lot of awareness needs to be done on that one. I think the implementation is still in its nascent stage, and more awareness needs to happen in India, at least with respect to this standard. If we talk of this standard, it's self-sufficient in itself to create a very high security level architecture.
Okay, thank
Maybe
you.
sir, for the IoT part.
I think framework is framed out you want to work, right? The ISE 62443 or any framework gives the guidelines what needs to be done. But as I said, that is only one portion of the requirement. We have to go a little above from that to see what is the context that we are working on. and what is it required for us to work. IEC could be one of the framework or could be some other framework, it could be NIST, it could be anything else. That's only to plug in for your requirement. But that is not the end game, right? I think uh, they may touch incident response as one of the area, but they don't go deep into that. How you go about doing the incident response. So they'll say, okay, whether you want incident response plan to be there. But incident response plan requires a double click to know exactly what needs to be done. That requires a contextual industry knowledge and the plant knowledge. The standards, I think blindly following the standards, frankly, I don't believe in. Yes, good reference for us to do that, but we have to double click to go above. Second is the vulnerability management, right? I think the IEC standard says you have to patch, but the risk-based vulnerability management is all we know exactly how critical in this OT environment, because you can't keep changing in the OT as immediate as possible, right? And then what kind of containment that you're looking at, alternative arrangement that you have, all these things comes practically. The IEC is not going to dictate. Similarly, many standards I've seen, they define you need to do a risk assessment. They don't tell you how to quantify the risk itself, correct? That is all, to me, the standard is standard, but we have to go a little beyond the standards, look at holistically that what we are trying to achieve out of that. And can I refer this standard 1, standard 2, or standard 3 as my reference? But I think independently, I think every organization needs to look at from an overall business context and then drive it. That's the best way of looking at it in my view.
Yeah, one other question, if I may ask. Yeah, so basically we are talking about resiliency versus efficiency, and traditionally we know that OT systems have been latching on to the very old systems, and they are not ready to upgrade to the latest patches and all, right? So, but then when we are talking about bringing in a lot of data analytics and all, so does this particular industry standard 4.0 give this capability that IT is coming close to OT, because typically IT has remained very away from OT for reasons that I mean the kind of industries they are, mostly critical infrastructure industries. So I mean any attack on such industries it is catastrophic, right? So now with this industry 4.0, do you think that IT is going to come really close to OT, and the historians and the conduits that we've been maintaining across the different security zones, are they going to be now collapsing and coming close to IT? That was my question.
So, if you ask me, my view is that resilient industry 4.0 is about automating completely. I mean, converging IT and OT systems, and you automate the whole process actually. But it clearly does not explain about the security aspect in that actually. So security is something we again have to dig deep into what is it about, because when you bring IT into OT, so even the Purdue model will fail actually. So all the standards we have been talking about Purdue model standards since 20-30 years, that it has to be according to the Purdue model. We have done some couple of IEC 62443 assessments, and what we have identified is no one could implement IEC 62443. We have given that as a risk also. So, but the organization to choose to take that as an accepted risk, because it will compromise their availability of their resource actually, and that is a problem that we are facing. So, resilient industry 4.0 does not talk about much of the security inside that actually. Security is something that we have to analyze and then see how to implement security with according to resilient industry 4.0. So resilient industry basically talks about how do you completely automate and then get out of the minimal manual effort also that is needed.
Right. I think the priorities also
One
for
thing to
OT
add
is
to what he said,
Yeah.
and also to connect what you asked, there is nothing wrong to have obsolete systems, because OT cannot have the same cycle of replacement. So there is a very common and popular ad, "Daag achhe hai." As long as you are aware of it and you are in a position to contain it and take an informed decision to bifurcate the amount of data that will flow from IT to OT and vice versa. That is something is the crux of what we all were trying to wrap up as such.
Understand that. I think IT, from IT perspective, CIA is that sequence, and from OT, it's the opposite way, AIC. So that's
Any other questions?
So I have a question specific to incident response. So in the OT industries, you're all the experts. So uh, we have C&I team, or somewhere it is called as E&I. So those people, they are specifically work on the processes, and they know about the instrumentation system and the field instrumentation and all. But they are not SMEs of the OEMs like Siemens, ABBs. The system they have deployed to automate all the industry. So, what do you think? Who should be the correct resolver group in that case? Let's say if there's an incident, and the team, incident response team, and they were saying that this is something related to this protocol, and you have to do the depth analysis. What is exactly? So what do you think? Who should be the correct resolver group in that case? Because those people are not SMEs.
Maybe you are the best person to answer. No conflict of interest.
Okay. Okay. So instead of talking about what happens after the incident happens, it is very important that we should have a proper threat intelligence with respect to OT attacks also, because that is where you will understand what has happened really actually. So the problem is that, yeah, with the OEMs also it happens that OEMs understand their systems very well. They know how their system operates. They know how the protocol understands. That is what we were also explaining before, that it is very important the cybersecurity analyst, including the incident response, they should have a fair idea about what is the OT technology here about. So they should have, for example, security analysts know about how HTTP protocol works. So they know the header, footer, everything, where the payload could be, everything. They can just go and see the PCAPs, or they can check the logs. Yeah, this is what has happened. But in case of OT, you will be seeing some non-common protocols like CIP, Modbus, Siemens S7, so many protocols like that. And each of them have their own architecture. So that is where the education of the skill set for the cybersecurity analyst should be given, and we are especially working on that we should have a solid understanding of how each and every protocol works actually. Some of them are proprietary protocols, some of them are open, so that is where still we are facing some challenges actually. But you can solve this issue if you have a proper threat intelligence with respect to OT. You won't be seeing a typical malware that you're seeing on an IT system like a backdoor or an exe file. Yeah, exe file you can see, but only till the level of SCADA machines or operator workstations. But exe files cannot run on an PLC because those are constrained devices. So what happens is basically when there is an operating system based malware, it could be an Linux or Windows malware, anything it could be. When it infects, it could reach till the level of operator workstations or the SCADA machines, and from there they will issue a manipulated command to the further level 2, level 1 or level 0 devices. That is how it will be actually. So that intelligence, it is very important to baselining of OT system is very important when it comes to threat intelligence actually. So manipulated commands, in the sense the PLC does not support anything apart from what it has been programmed to do. So it would be a set of 15 to 20 commands that it can issue. It can either read or write or reset or certain things actually it can do, or it can issue some functions to the actuators over there. So it is very important to do the baselining of the OT industry to understand what is your configuration, what time, what have you scheduled to do in your plant, all of those things, and to build a threat intelligence based on that. Okay, so these are the certain high risk functions that we can see on this particular protocol or on the device. Okay, and that intelligence is very much important, and we should have an association with that, what kind of threat actors or what kind of malware till level 3 or level 4 uses it, all of those with that information. If we see certain kind of an detection alert generated on the OT systems, we can immediately raise an alarm that, okay, I have seen a command here actually. So that the main thing is that threat intelligence is very important with respect to OT. Yeah, obviously IT also comes in when it comes to OT, because it has to be either by it will be either through a dual LAN based devices like IoT devices, like which connects the OT and IT devices, or based on an insider who inserts an USB and then runs an malware inside the SCADA machine, and that is directly connected to the PLC, and the PLC gets infected, and it issues manipulated commands to the actuators, which stops the protection, or it could cause some human hazard also. So that intelligence, it is very important to secure this. So with that only you will also be able to perform an incident response. So incident response based on IT logs, that is half of it. But it is very important that you should have also logs with respect to OT, uh, which is very specific to how OT systems work.
Yeah, just to in a little bit lighter way, uh, to particularly answer to your question, in this case, the INC or the C&I should take the lead, but actually it's a teamwork. So you know, TCP is a three-way handshake. Until and unless we smudge the boundary between our OT and the IT guys and work together as a team, I think the OT incident response will not be complete. The C&I or the INC person will be very thorough, but he or she needs to work a bit further to understand the IT aspects of it. And in today's world, you know, that what we see that if we are going for a segmented network kind of scenario, most of the INC guys are very conversant with what's happening actually in the network, the protocols, how it's actually happening. And the moment we form a team with the IT, it's in itself a complete, because IT guys are expert in their own field. So for me, it's a teamwork basically, with the lead being from the OT side.
I think thank you. I mean, that also brings us an end to this session. So thanks to each one of you. It has been a beautiful session along with you. A lot of knowledge we have gained. And thanks, Omika, for hosting us. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
sir.